So we're looking at the person of Peter this morning, one of Jesus' disciples. And my name isn't Peter, my name's Dave, obviously. But actually, I might not have the same name as him, but I feel like we're pretty similar in some ways, in the sense that Peter was just this everyday guy. He was just a normal guy that Jesus chose to have, follow him around. And, he had this massive heart, but he also had his flaws on the other side. He would, open his mouth at the wrong time. He'd say the ridiculous things. He'd cut someone's ear off. He'd deny that he knew Jesus, even though, like, a few days before he might have been saying how much he loves Jesus. And he goes back and forth. But at the end of the day, Jesus looked at his heart and said, I want that. I want that heart. I don't care about all the rest of it. I don't care about the flaws. I don't care about the mistakes you make. Your heart is what I'm looking at. And so this morning I'm just going to take a few minutes just to talk about how, we can look at Peter's life and sort of see how we should be responding to Jesus. So number one is that humility should be our natural response to Jesus. So as Roger was saying earlier, the story of Peter, he was called Simon to start with, and Jesus jumped in his fishing boat and was like, can you take me to the other side, to the shore, and I've got to go preach. So he did, and then after that, he jumped back in the boat and was like, right, take me to the deepest part of this sea. And so he did, and when they got there, Jesus was like, 3 minutes over. And Simon and Andrew were sitting there thinking, we've been doing this for hours, what is this guy going on about? But reluctantly they were like, yeah, okay, we'll chuck our nets over, we'll show you there's no fish. Pulled it in, and there was so many fish that it says the boat actually started to sink. And when that happened, he said, Lord, get away from me, I'm a sinful man. And he literally threw himself on the floor at Jesus' feet. We have the most powerful God. He's above all things, he is bigger than all things. And Peter felt unworthy to be in his presence. He threw himself at his feet and said, look, you don't want to be near me, I'm sinful, I've done all this stuff. And you know what Jesus' response is? I want you to follow me. I don't look at all the stuff you've done. I look at your heart. Your heart is good. And so I want you to follow me. As Peter was before Jesus, we need to be humble before God. And know that we are not perfect. I know I'm not perfect. I've made all sorts of mistakes in my life, and I will continue to make mistakes in my life. That's life. And as long as we humble ourselves before God, God just says, I love you more than anything. So our humility should be our natural response to Jesus. Number 2, Jesus is always working at restoring us and redeeming us. I mentioned it earlier on about Peter denying Jesus 3 times when when Peter realised what he'd done, he wept bitterly. It says that in Matthew 26. Jesus then went through crucifixion and was raised to life again. And they were having breakfast on a beach, and then when they'd finished eating, Jesus went over and said, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said, yes, Lord. He said, you know that I love you. And Jesus told him to feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The 3rd time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus had asked him the 3rd time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. And what you might realise there is that Jesus asked him 3 times whether he loved him. And it goes back to Peter denying Jesus 3 times. But actually, Jesus is telling Peter that his failure hasn't disqualified him from his role as a disciple. He is encouraging him. It's like, Peter does love Jesus. It's just he's made mistakes before. And Jesus is encouraging him to go and feed his sheep. His name is Rock, the rock that, he's going to build his church on. Jesus is encouraging him to go and build that church, to go and feed his sheep. We all have moments of spectacular failure. We all have moments where we're like, oh, I've really messed up big time here. But it does not mean that there's no way back. Jesus still loves us. Jesus wants us with him. And he's constantly redeeming and restoring us and forgiving us. There's nothing that we could do wrong that would ever stop him loving us. Okay, and then number 3 is that boldness is a sign that you're close to Jesus. And so after Jesus is, asking Peter, does he love him? And he's telling him to go and feed his sheep and build his church. Peter does that. Peter goes and starts preaching the word, preaching about Jesus and telling everyone how amazing he is. And the sad thing is that a lot of people at that time didn't want to hear it. There was a lot of religious leaders who didn't like it. And actually Peter and another disciple called John got put in prison. And they were locked up because they were preaching about Jesus. And then, one day they were locked up, and the religious leaders and elders and teachers came and they wanted to question them, and Peter immediately just started preaching at them about Jesus again. And one of the things he says in Acts 4 verse 12, he finishes by telling them, "Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved." And then in Acts 4 verse 13, straight after that, he said, "When they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, they were ordinary men, they were astonished, and they took note that these men had been with Jesus." I don't know about you, but if I was locked up in prison and people came to question me, I would be a quivering wreck. I don't think the first thing that would come to my mind is to stand up and start preaching about the good news of Jesus. And I want to be in a place where that would be it, but right now I can honestly tell you that that's not what I would be doing. But the amazing thing is that, as it says, Peter, and John, but we're looking at Peter today. He was just an ordinary person. There was nothing special about him. He didn't go to Bible school. He didn't have degrees. He didn't have qualifications. Jesus chose them to be his disciples, and they just walked with Jesus, hearing what he was teaching and acting on what he was teaching. And because of that, they felt bold. They had the courage and the boldness to step out and do these amazing things, go and just talk to people about him. So if we are close to Jesus, it will show through our boldness. Just like Peter had spent all that time with him, that made him bold. Actually, when we spend more time with God, when we spend more time learning about Jesus, that boldness in us grows. And then at some point, that's just going to overflow, and we can't do anything but tell people about him. And so that's it. And those 3 points: that humility should be our natural response to Jesus. Remain humble before him. Number 2, Jesus is always at work redeeming and restoring us. No matter what we do, we all make mistakes, but Jesus can see past them, and he loves us anyway. And then number 3, boldness is a sign that you're close to Jesus. And my encouragement to you is to really dig into who Jesus is, spend time with him, learn about him, pray to him, talk with him, and then my prayer is that would fill you with boldness to be able to go and talk about him to other people. And that's it. That's what I want to bring, and I hope you have a really, really blessed day. Thanks.